just off of Troy Road. You've been in Niskuna. It's right near St. David's Lane. In fact, that was the mosquito control guy for the St. David's Lane Association as one of my civic duties. I also helped get the sewer system going in our little subdivision. But then Dorothy, we only had one car, and I was carpooling with a guy. Anyhow, it drove her nuts out there. She had these two little kids, and she entered the art show down here and won first prize in oils, and met George Weinheimer, who was the head of art for Schenectady schools. He lived about the third house down on Front Street from North Ferris Corner there on the other side. It's a Colonial or something. Or,
yeah. Just pull this up. We're all set. We're ready to go. Okay.
so she talked to George, and she was so terribly upset about living in Niskuna. She wanted to be in a place where there are people. It was very limiting. She had the car to go shopping mainly when I wasn't at work. So I'll tell you, I had a lot of heat. So I said, all right, we're going to move. Yeah. And put the house on sale. I got an apartment down here at 22 North Street. It's right down here, right across from Jessie. Oh, okay. She knows the Polish woman's name. I don't remember it. The first floor apartment was, there were four of us. We squeezed in there. Had plenty of furniture for that, but the toilet was in a closet, all stand alone. You had to wash your hands in the sink, and it was really quite marginal for four people. Yeah. So about 3 months, she was nice, and we got along well with her, but we got 124 Front over here, where a fellow named Ermi Kuroda and his wife lived, owned it.
What year is this?
Yeah, we came here in 1960, so it was about 64 we came down to Stockade area. And then we started out at 22 North, then we went to 124 Front. And the first floor flat was as big, has 3 bedrooms. It's quite nice. Well, I don't know, think it was nice, but it was nice for us at that time. And I got the house sold in Niskuna. And then after a while, we moved to 31 North Ferry, which is it was owned by the Crucies, who were big people in GE. One of the sons was really a current owner when we went there. He was with GE in Connecticut. And it was a really elegant place. It still is. Three floors, finished basement, and it's attached to another one that's similar on the next door. It's just a couple of doors up from Arthur's. It's one of the big tall ones there. And it was really nice, but it had a lot of good, really, really expensive furniture. I recognized it after a while. It was antiques, and we had several Siamese cats, and one of them jumped on one and started to scratch one of them. And I said, Dorothy, we piled it all in a separate room and closed it off. And I was quite happy there. My son built a solar cooker, and he was going to Zoller, I think, at the time. And Dorothy kept looking. We looked at houses. I know most every house around here. And this one existed here at 4 North. It was a total disaster. Absolute total disaster, a wreck. She kept talking about it. I said, well, it's terrible. It's unbelievable badly. And she said, well, it's nice. And it turned out it was wise because it's high compared to the floods. We weren't even touched by Irene. So the house next door was, and that hadn't been touched since 1908. So it was a very unusual flood. Irene came through. So a guy named Nick Colangelo lived up here, older guy. He was about my age, well, he was older, like probably 70 at the time, right? And he bought this house for $6,000. And this was right under Dorothy's desires. She wanted it. So she finally convinced me. I went up and talked. I said, if I gave you $7,000, would you sell it to me, Nick? He says, okay. Just like that. He made $1,000 in a month. And this house, well, first of all, the land stops right here. That's in the deed. The whole place was a muddy mess. There were cars getting up the mud in their axles. There must have been some large home here that was demolished in between here and Front Street. It had a Front Street address, I'm sure. Jesse might be able to give you more details on that because I wasn't here when that disappeared. But it was weedy, muddy, almost ran into a little fence that was along there. It was terrible. So we proceeded to have all electrical removed. A guy named Mr. Phillips, sort of a general contractor from Scotia, he's dead now. He's a really nice guy. Very old. He knew everything about how to do old homes. And the house had been, right now there's still a remnant of a slide where they used to put coal in the back for the coal thing. But the time we moved in, they were on oil, but that was already broken down, and they had a big oil tank in the basement. So we had all that taken out, put in a new natural gas furnace. All the wiring was redone. And well, there's still some remnants of old, what do they call it? Forgotten what they call it, old wires that used to be exposed. Knob, yeah, that's it, in here. And let's see, plumbing was all new, relocated the bathrooms entirely, tore out, this was 3 rooms here, and there was a room here, this was the dining room, and then there's a kitchen, you had to go through that way, and we remodeled the whole thing. Upstairs, we didn't, well, we put this kind of ceiling in the bedroom, but the rest is kind of ordinary, or there's a strange thing in the back of the attic. There's a big door about this wide that you can control from the second floor. And I think it was for putting hay or straw in for horses or something. That's the only thing I can think of, because they had a great big hook to haul stuff up into it. Maybe it's something else, I don't know what it was. But anyhow, I put the insulation up there, and some of this stuff is the floor. And so it's got a cedar shiplap floor. Interesting about the floor, in the bedroom, there are 3 little rooms called bedrooms. The one I sleep in, Dorothy and I did, was the front one. And in the bottom of this, they have old boards there. The original flooring is still upstairs. There was a knothole about that big. So one day I went to put a big cork in it after we moved in, and I looked down in there and I saw some marbles. And I fished all these marbles out, and I got about, I would say about 20 old clay marbles before glass marbles were in there, and I collected them. I gave them to the Historical Society, but that was a nice thing. But
what year is this house?
What was that?
What year was this house built?
We think 1860, the best we can determine. It's very hard because of the numbers, but I found a thing in the directory that said there was bootmaker lived at 4 North Street, or operated at 4 North Street. It was in one of the old city directories. So I imagine that was where he was. But essentially, maybe you didn't notice the big pussy willow. There's a huge pussy willow out there. I planted it as a little twig. This big maple tree was a big tree when we moved in, and that was 45 years ago. It's even bigger now. I keep wondering if I thought Dorothy and I talked about it. I said, "Well, that's the way to go. Be crushed by your old." It's not our tree, but the owner, who was kind of a very wealthy, eccentric fellow, told me that I could take care of it a lot if I wanted to. So I personally took care of it for a long time with weed whackers and all that stuff and some grass seed. But after I got less physically capable, I got Ray Tibbetts, who lives right across from Jesse, mows it for me. And he also takes care of the snow. In I retired from GE in 1990, and every winter after that we went to Florida. We were snowbirds for, I guess, 12 years or so until I had a big problem with one of my feet and couldn't go anymore. But I don't know if there's anything more about the house. It's
Well, this street is where you work on the water system.
what's that?
Did you work on the water system on this street?
Oh yeah, well, not just the street. I can get in the. But first of all, you know that church up the street that from you?
On North College.
What's her name? Names are a little tough for me. It's about the only thing. Margaret and Joe walked up there every morning forever, going to services, every Catholic, and they go someplace now, but I don't know where. But if you ever want to know anything about the church, they would know. They're next to Jesse there. He's a retired state worker. I think it's O'Donnell's probably. But so let's see. All right. Well, I was going to walk down and around geographically. I told you about the Front Street pool. There used to be an ice yard there that cut ice out of the Mohawk, which is an old-time thing. When I was a boy in Ohio, we had an ice pond that they cut ice out of this pond and saved it for the summer because there was no refrigeration. So that was the ice yard. When we came here, it was kind of wild, and there was no pool and no. All the development happened since we came here. At the end of Ingersoll, when we were putting in this new water system, it goes from Ingersoll all the way down through the park, all the way down to Washington, up Cucumber Alley, and up North Ferry, up North Street, up Ingersoll. And it's all in this huge interlocked loop now. When we first came, before I knew about this, when we got involved in changing the water system, it was just a dead end at the end of the street. And if anything happened up here, you had no water. Now you can get all kinds of different circulations. Oh, at the end of Ingersoll, during this excavation, which, Jack Zager and I were sort of the liaison with the city.
Did you start
to make sure everybody know what was happening. It was it's pretty tricky. You're having different streets dug way up with big trenches, and.
Was this a project that you suggested to the city, or was it something?
No. I don't. The city it must have been a long-known problem because I didn't know about it until they started. We didn't. I don't think we instigated it, but somebody had to sort of liaison with the neighborhood, And at the end of the project, in a big heap of mud down at the bottom of Ingersoll, I found it must have been a 4 feet long anchor of an old type that they must have used for barges in the Erie Canal. I put it in the car and took it up and gave it to the Historical Society. And during the excavation on North Street, I think I've mentioned that for you, about halfway down across from where the Duggins lived, they came across about a section, I'd say 3 or 4 feet long of the old stockade, one of the old stockades. There are apparently several stockades over the years. It was running north and south, and Dorothy got a piece of that, and we gave it to the Historical Society. So they know about it, or at least somebody used to know about it. And I think that's the main thing about this. The water system is, we have very high pressure, but it's not out of balance. It's very high and good, though. And they did a good job. They've changed all the leads into the houses, so there's no lead in it anymore, which is a big deal. You know, let's see if there's any other.
How was that interacting with the neighborhood, being the liaison between the neighborhood and the city? Was it problematic?
Oh yeah, what's that? The lead?
No, you being the liaison between the neighborhood. And
Yeah, it was. We didn't have any problems at all. No, everybody was really glad to have it happen. Except it was pretty tough. I mean, you got a lot of paving, and it was a big deal. It was a city, I'd say, assistant engineer or something with the project all the time. In addition to the corporation, I don't know if it's Callahan or one of that put it in. And let's see. Oh, in the park, there's a marker about a tree down there. Do you know about that? You ever walked along there? Mm-hmm. There's a little monument there to in memory of I forgot her name. It's Peter Polachek was Arthur's son. He had a daughter that committed suicide when she was about 22 or so. She took the van and went to some wild place and hooked the exhaust up to the car. I think she was on drugs and couldn't get off. That's why it was kind of very not publicized about why. But anyhow, they planted this tree and put this nice little marker down there in her memory. It's right near the bench that's down just to the left down there. And
now Arthur's Market was at the time when you moved. Arthur's Market, when you moved here, the market was.
Oh yeah.
thriving.
Oh, I've got some more. But Jesse knows more about it that night. Across from the school, I'll tell you a little bit about the school. I only know a little bit. Across from the school was the polling place. And there's a big glass, I think they've changed it now, but there's a big glass plate window in the front of this one place that had chairs. I don't know whether it used to be a little restaurant or what. But anyhow, on polling day, the Democrats would have a couple of bottles of whiskey there. You come in, have a shot or two, and talk over the world's problems, and make sure you voted for whoever they wanted. So that's gone. And then when we moved here, right, this little house across the street, it had a big plate glass window. And Jessie knows all about this because she probably patronized it. The fellow raised something like, this is a tiny house about this size. He raised, I believe, 8 kids, 6 at least. In that, he and his wife, he ran a little butcher shop. And the place all along here would be lined up in the spring when they're making their kielbasa to get their kielbasa. It was apparently a real treat for so, and by the time we moved in here, that was of course we knew about it, but we'd been at other places, but by the time we moved in here, that had closed. And I think he died or retired or something. And several other people have come have it. The guy now, Bob Stern, is the secretary of the corresponding secretary of the Stockade Association.
Yeah, I'm on the board.
yeah, he's a nice guy. He had, and let's see, what else? Oh, my wife was always upset about the filling of the Binnakill. It's slowly being eliminated. The Binnakill used to be a place where little boats could go up and back of Washington Avenue there all the way up to near where Van Curler was. The Van Curler was the name of the hotel. I had a lot of trouble recalling that name, but when I came back, I remember it was quite a, well, you can see it. It's the old part of the Schenectady Community College, the Van Curler. But all that is now closed, is just being filled in. I haven't been down there for quite a few years. My foot problems started in '07, so it's quite a little while ago now. And
what was the park and that whole area? What was that like back in the '60s?
well,
What was it like in the park area?
oh well, the park was nice. I haven't mentioned it. There was a swimming pool on North Street, down here at the end of North Street on the left. There you can still see the marks where there's a swimming pool owned by the city, and they closed that up finally, which was all right with me because it meant a lot of traffic on North Street, and we, as you might notice, the street is very narrow. It's probably one of the narrowest streets in the city, I'm pretty sure. And I know my house is one of the smaller ones, which is good if you're living alone and paying taxes. But yeah, up on, I was talking about Arthur's a little bit. Arthur's was very successful, and they had several things that they had that they don't have now. New York Times used to be the source for New York Times. So you go there on Sunday, and there would be 50 or 60 of these Times that cost quite a bit of money, with their name on it. I mean, everybody had a name. He reserved all these New York Times for people, so it was a big business. Now I get it delivered at the there's today's right locally, but that was a good thing. And then of course cigarettes were a really big business, and until the Y closed, it was all. They used to have a lot of transients come down, and buy a beer and put it in a bag and go out and relax in the park. But that's all improved so much. It's really great now. So let's see.
Were there other businesses in the neighborhood?
Well, up on the other side of Union on the left is that, what do they call it? He has a name for it. The same guy that's running Arthur's now has this little tiny, Moon and River place. That used to be Mr. Vogel's. And Mr. Vogel's was a guy that had, in fact, he delivered the paper for a while. And he had papers. That's where I used to see Sam Stratton, who was the senator. The Stratton Air Force Base here is named after him. Really nice guy. And by the time I got to know him, he had Parkinson's. He was in his 70s. But he lived in the local area. And it's got a lot of different histories.
And Mr. Vogel's was a place to...
What's that?
Mr. Vogel's was a place that sold newspapers, or?
Oh, he had papers, and we had mainly confectionery, old-fashioned confectionery store, buy candies and stuff. Let's see. Oh, I might well mention, when I came down here, I got involved in we had a tree committee with the Stockade Association, and I was on that. We planted, I don't know, 40 or 50 little. We had a lot of advice because they didn't want to buy trees that were going to interfere with the power lines. We put that in. That was called the Tree Committee. And I also, with my wife being an artist and involved in the arts thing all the time, I was on the art committee, and art show committee, and we had a whole bunch of racks in some garage someplace, and we'd get them out and set them up and make arrangements for the barriers and all that stuff. Did that for a good number of years. I also, on the Walkabout, which was a big income producer for the Stockade Association.
Still is.
Yeah, I used to sit on the front porch of the Historical Society and sell tickets. So that was, I was wondering the other day, wonder if they have a credit card thing now. Everybody uses a credit card. They must have. But we used to have a policeman there. There was so much money about cash, you know. There used to be a policeman come by and escort you out to wherever you delivered the money to. It was fun. I don't know.
Were you or your wife involved in the Stockade Association, on the board or anything? Or?
Oh, Dorothy was editor of the Spy for 2 years, and I did a lot of recruiting, traveling. I go to, you know, all the MIT, RPI. I was a team leader for RPI for GE. GE was a big deal in those days. GE Research had more patents than anybody in the country. General Electric did. Of course, in those days, they were very big in defense, too, which is not true anymore. So, let's see.
Mr. Tiemann, who lived on Union Street.
Jerry Tiemann? Tiemann?
Yeah, worked.
Oh, I knew him well. I used to ride with him and give him rides. Yeah, he's very unusual. I've heard later that he's more unusual than I thought he was. He was a bright guy. He was so good. First time I saw him, they had a big meeting of the staff at that time it was just the research lab. It was more or less pure research compared to development, which came from the general engineering lab, which I was in for a while too. But when they combined, I was back by a bunch. But he had this teeny little, I guess, microphone, radio. He put the ear and go around and talk to people. That was really exciting. He was a very, very brilliant electrical engineer.
His my friend bought his house at 232 Union.
Oh, really?
And his workshop in the there was all kinds of like half-made inventions and.
Oh yeah, well, I think maybe something happened to his wife recently. I think
she moved down with their sons to North Carolina, somewhere in the South. She was living in their New York City place.
Yes,
and then
yes.
she moved
Oh, okay. That's what I heard. There was some change.
She moved
But
down
I
there,
went
yeah.
to a big memorial service, a local thing that she had for Jerry. But yeah, he was a very interesting guy. So,
He held quite a few patents himself.
oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure he must be American Men of Science. He's got to be in there. A lot of people. There's a. Trying to think, George Wise. George Wise, a historian works at Union College now. But George Wise was a historian for the research lab, and he knows everything about all those people. He's still around. I haven't talked to him for a while, but there was a group called the Langmuir Lunch Group that I would belong to until this year. I still belong to it, but I don't go anymore because it's too far to walk from. They got good parking for me, but I've got to walk about a quarter of a mile to get to the conference room, and that's really too hard for me now. I'm getting weaker and weaker. So let's see. Yeah, there's a huge number of resources here. You know, you mentioned Gil Harlow. He was the head of the civil engineering department at Union College for years.
He lived in the governor's mansion.
Yeah, well, his main job was being professor of civil engineering, and he was very expert at concrete testing and things. He filled his summers doing that as a consultant for the state, testing concrete. It's very important to have the right water mix. If you get too much water in the concrete, it's worthless. It loses strength very quickly. It's got to be almost so stiff that you can't move it around. And the great temptation for ordinary guys, like I used to be right at CB's all the time, because they want to pour water in it to get it moving faster. Well, it defeats the whole purpose. But if you don't know about it, you don't know. So let's see. Trying to think of any other thing.
Well, a lot of people, speaking of Gil Harlow, a lot of people talked about the pool.
Oh, well, he used to have almost an annual expedition coming from Holland to see his begonias.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, he was a national expert in begonias. This reminds me, we used to have a cat we called Yum Yum Begonia. She was the mother of Thor, who lived to be 23. He's down in the garden back here.
The begonias were in their backyard. I wonder, are they still there?
No, he had it's a greenhouse type thing.
Oh,
He has a greenhouse attached to or I don't know. I haven't been there for 10 years now.
the greenhouse is still there. I don't
Well,
know.
then that's where he had his begonias, and he was really an expert. I mean, people would come from all over to see his begonias, and to talk to him about them. You know, that's in addition to his concrete knowledge and his longevity. I guess I hear he's still around.
He just turned 100.
Yeah, because he was always. He's 10 years older than I was.
So did he pour the concrete for that pool then? Or?
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea. It was called the University Club, and they called it. They had housing for mainly new young GE engineers that come in and stay there until they decided to move on. They had a pool and lots of guys, and it was nice, you know. But that was the University Club. Oh, somebody you ought to talk to is Larry Schmidt and Jennifer Schmidt. They have a great big house, second one in from Cucumber Alley. Great big house that he's renovating himself. He's a very interesting guy. In fact, he wrote a letter to the editor just the other day about the construction down on the casino thing down here. He's very interesting. I haven't seen him for a long time, and he found out I was turning 90, and he and his wife showed up on my birthday. Jennifer, she's very nice too. But that's somebody you really ought to look to. There's more or less backdoor neighbors to Gene Zager. Their houses go like this. You know Gene because of Pete Hornby. Let's see.
Other people in the neighborhood that, like Jerry Tiemann, other people like that who, I don't know, were instrumental in any kind of.
Well, he didn't have much to do with the stockade.
Well,
Werner and Jim were really spark plugs for the whole thing, of course. Mm-hmm. And there was a huge ceremony when and it's written up in a lot of places, even probably the Gazette has it, when they installed those big pillars at the entrance with all the engraving and all that. They closed part of Union Street and had chairs up and lots of announcements and dedications and such for that entrance there at the Union Street and Erie Boulevard. Do you know those things?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, where it's too damn rough and you drive over it, knocks your teeth out.
Slows people down.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, Gene wrote what's on the pillars.
Somebody did.
Gene Zager did.
Oh, she was one of them. Yeah. Well, she's certainly interested in that. I have someplace in all the stuff that's going to be tossed out are some pictures of the arrangement there. I used to really be interested in photography until I got hurt, and two, they gave up film.
Do you have any old pictures of the neighborhood? Older pictures?
Of what?
Of the neighborhood? Do you still-
Yeah. Yeah, I gave Like this house over in the corner is totally. I mean, I once gave an offer for $10,000 for it, and that was when I lived at 124 Front. It was very much a wreck. This whole along the border of the sidewalk across the street was a wall or a fence, and all that's been removed and cut in, and huge, very large amount of money is put in this corner house here. Do you know? Sassy is the last name. You know, her husband was such a nice guy. I only knew him a year. I met him about 2 months later. He came down with cancer, but he gave me